From PA announcing to hosting the annual TechSpees Awards banquet, Gavin Kelly cut his teeth on the athletic marketing side. Now he's responsible for so many facets of the Louisiana Tech University Communications Department, including hosting the Beyond 1894 podcast. It's a crossover pod, as now it's me hitting Gavin with all the hard-hitting questions as he joins Tech Drive. Voice of the Bulldogs, Kyle Schasberger with you. This is another edition of Tech Drive. An Associate Director of Communications, Gavin Kelly, is my guest today, a fellow bald. As you can see, he's also wearing the glasses. I made the conscious decision not to wear glasses so we can avoid looking like twins, but our blues kind of offset pretty well.
Yeah, matching the blues. I'm sure we'll get into it, but the last time we had a conversation was for a different podcast, but that was audio only. And I alluded to the fact that we were both had nary a hair on a head to be seen, but now everyone can see it for themselves. So,
how's your head surviving this little brief cold spell?
Yeah, it's weirdly chilly and windy outside, and I think you just got to make sure you keep a beanie on, a hoodie, something. Guys like us, we got to keep the head warmed up.
You do. I was at Walmart late on Sunday. I had just gotten back from almost 2 weeks of travel with men's basketball, so I'm still trying to get my bearings underneath me, but the rain was going sideways. There was a tornado watch, and when I ran to my car, I didn't run. I slow walked. I'm like, you know what? Give it to me. If this is what life is supposed to give me right now, I didn't have a hat. Actually, I had my hat, but I went ahead and took it off just for the dramatic flair, because that's kind of how I operate in life. And I just used my hat as like a battering ram through the sideways rain to just cut through and get back to my vehicle. So
maybe we should think about getting some Rain-X up here. Maybe it'll just roll off and beat off. I don't know. We might be onto something.
Could be. Gavin is making the return trip of a home and home, if you will. The sports pun there. His podcast, Beyond 1894, I was on right after the holidays. So if you haven't found that, and I'm going to allow Gavin an opportunity to talk about Beyond 1894 if you haven't found it already, please do so. Subscribe, like it, wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify. No video component for that one, so that's why Gavin's here. So we're able to serenade you with his beautiful presence, which is awesome. So the crossover continues in a setting where I can pepper you now with questions. How did my pod do, by the way? Were there more than like 10 people that listened?
Yes, there were, and I think too, it's always interesting to have guests on because we have students, faculty, staff, alumni from all areas of the university. So it is fun to be able to publish an episode and share it on social media and then watch those people's social circles react to it and share it. And so you got some supporters out there, man. They were happy to listen.
I don't know where these fans come from, but it's good. It makes you feel good. Let's start with that pod, Beyond 1894, because I have gotten a lot of positive feedback from it from other people, here in the community, in the university, and certainly people back in North Carolina where I came from, family, friends, what have you. The service you're doing in telling the stories of people connected to the university in a variety of different ways, right? It could be people who are currently employed there as part of the administration, faculty members, could be other students, organizations, whatever it is. I mean, nobody's kind of off limits. How have you enjoyed that? And how many years has it been? And speak to kind of the growth of that podcast.
Yeah, so when Beyond 1894 started, and I want to say it was around 2020, I hadn't been in this position in university communications very long. And I had very little to do with it when it first started. But the individual who was mostly over the podcast at the time, not long after that, ended up with another job opportunity and greener pastures and that sort of thing. And so it was kind of left on the rest of us to piece together a way to keep the podcast going. And slowly but surely over a year or so, it went from me helping out with editing and publishing the podcast to scheduling interviews, doing the interviews, publishing, posting, analytics, all that sort of thing. So essentially it just became fully mine. And so that sort of trickle of responsibility of it helped me. I wasn't kind of thrown into the deep end with it right away. But I tell people all the time, like, even if it got 10 listens an episode, like what it's done in terms of me learning about the people that help make the tech family special and like what it's done for me networking wise, just in terms of making connections on campus and strengthening relationships that we as university communications need to have, in an external facing operation. So um, it's been probably, let's see, 2 or 3 years at least, maybe 3 or 4 of running it full time. And I don't really keep count of what episode we're on. It's bi-weekly, so every other Wednesday. It kind of gives me a little, we talked early on, should it be a weekly thing? Should it be
Hmm.
bi-weekly? Should it even be monthly? And, it's a quality over quantity situation. You don't want to spread us all too thin. So that's been a good sort of schedule release for us. And we've had a couple milestone episodes. It was really cool being able to have kind of the farewell interview with Dr. Les Geis when he was on his way out as president, and then just a few weeks after that, have the very first interview with President Henderson when he had just
Hmm.
started. So things like that are really special. But like you said, it's kind of just about the way it's helped me connect with the people who work here and the people who have been here, and the way they all have a different story, but there's always a common thread. And then, like, even having somebody like you on who is new to the tech family, but is able to very early on see what those common threads are and feel very connected to it. It's been fun. It's been fun.
Yeah, and it's a tremendous listen. The way you're connecting the dots and hoping to, show how infused the university culture and community and even athletics at times all comes together. Really, the synergy at play, right, with such a small community and how powerful and how important Louisiana Tech is, and some of these stories and opportunities you have with guests, as big as Dr. Geis and his departure, and then the arrival of Dr. Henderson, like that's a pretty big deal to be able to have an exclusive setting for them to be able to speak, publicly to a variety of different things. So, do you have is there a favorite episode or guest that you have had? I mean, some of them can be very different, covering a wide,
Yeah,
ranging amount of topics.
yeah. At risk of leaving somebody short, I wouldn't pick a favorite. But like I said, there have been moments that stand out. The presidential ones stand out. Um, no names off the top of my head, but I think what I enjoy is when a guest is unexpectedly fun
Hmm.
or kind of unexpectedly naturally able to converse with me. And I think I haven't had any bad guests on, and
Sure.
so I'm not worried, but
Hmm.
I'm always like, it feels like we have an infinite well of good guests to have on beyond 1894, and I'm always worried I'm going to run out, but it just seems like we're able to keep going, and I'm thankful for that.
Well, a lot of that I think is a reflection of the interviewer, right? I
If you
mean,
say so, I'm
I
flattered.
was I was very surprised when Gavin and I sat down back around the holidays for our visit. You had no notes prepared. You had one
I
small
usually
little
don't.
tiny notebook.
Uh
I
huh.
mean, this guy, you are way better than me in that regard because I would lose my mind in terms of like making sure I have a mental checklist that coincides with something I have on paper, maybe, and how to like further develop a question or a follow up or whatever it is. But like you did a majestic job
Well,
in
I'm
in
flattered.
in
Thank you.
steering through my interview, and I can only imagine that was just you talking to me, but all these other high ranking guests and other individuals, I would imagine it's much the same process. What goes into your process of preparing on the front end? Well, you might not have a sheet of paper in front of you throughout, and you're relying on your gut and your instincts and developing a conversation more than anything else. What is your process for preparing for each podcast?
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned not having very many questions written out or things like that, and that is true of all guests in the sense that I'm going to ask everyone a similar thing up top. I'm going to ask people where they came from and how they got here. Usually that leads into what they do here and why they like what they do here. And along the way, that's 80% of the conversation I'm going to have with most of these people anyway. And along the way, that means they're going to chart their, you know, academic history and their professional career. Um, and within those comes telling me about, where they found their passions, why they chose to study what they study, or get into the student organization that they're a part of or whatever. That all comes naturally with those first 3 4 simple questions. And then, as they talk to me, I just treat it like I'm having a conversation with these people, and that the pressure's off and the mics are off. And when they say something that sounds like it would be an interesting question to ask or an interesting road to go down for that conversation, I just take us in that direction. And because I feel like too, it's important for a lot of guests that I've had on to let them know that up front, because it takes pressure off. You know, some people, they hear that they're going to be on a podcast and they worry about what they're going to say, or they're not interesting enough, or whatever. And I tell them, I'm like, look, first of all, I wouldn't ask you to come on if I didn't think there was a reason for you to be on. But second, I'm going to make it as painless as possible. We're just going to sit down and have a chat. No pressure to be a one take wonder or to answer. I'm not going to ask you really hard hitting questions and about your personal life and try to make you cry or anything crazy like that. So just come in and we'll sit down, we'll have a chat. And that's what most episodes have been like. And that's, I think, one reason why it's worked.
I've done a pretty good job the last couple of minutes of not even looking down at my notes. So I'm kind of just going off of, again, just feeling you out and being reactionary. And we will talk about your journey because you haven't left since you've graduated.
That's true.
Here.
That's correct.
You have been here. So you are a tech person through and through, and you have kind of moved up through the ranks and get to your position of associate director of communications and what all that entails. One more question on the podcast. So when it comes to guest generation for Beyond 1894, is this solely, are you the judge, jury, executioner? Who are you leaning on maybe for storyboard ideas or certain guest potential? You know, Cammy's been on, Teddy's been on. There's year in review stuff. There's some obvious, things, low-hanging fruit at certain parts, throughout the year, and big groundbreaking news that might impact the university when you know who you want to get on to further develop a topic. But when it comes down to that cadence of every other week, and trust me, we have these conversations.
Yeah.
At least we did, prior to launching this last August after my arrival. Is this weekly thing? Is this every other week type thing? And we'll continue to have those conversations and develop it. But for you and a guest, what all goes into that?
Yeah, so the rest of the university communications team kind of know that it's fair game to throw a name out there at any point. We keep kind of a soft list going of good names that float around, but a lot of times, like you said, there's low-hanging fruit. Sometimes that is annually kind of refreshes. So like Union Board, SGA, their president and vice president, that changes year to year, but it's always good to have those students on. Year in review, Giving Day, some annual things, homecoming that we kind of talk about every year that refreshes. But a lot of it is, thankfully, it's university communications' responsibility to kind of be plugged into who's doing what around campus. And so I'm surrounded by a good team of people who have an ear to the ground, so to speak, and are able to throw names out there that more often than not end up being good considerations for podcast guests. So once the name's out there, it's really just as simple as basically a cold call. If I've never even talked to this person before, it doesn't matter. I'll just say like, hey, we'd like to have you on the Beyond 1894 podcast. We think you'd be a great guest. I promise it'll be okay if you just trust me, and there we go.
Yeah. You're probably seeing my buddy Teddy Legend, Teddy Allen, more than I am, at least over the last couple of months. Just because you're over at Wiley.
Yeah.
And after football ended, I feel like a part of me died inside because I wasn't seeing Teddy as regularly. Now that's going to change now with the cadence of baseball and me not missing as much baseball and him being there at the Love Shack. But, gosh, my favorite guy on campus.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
I am spoiled having him in Wiley every once in a while. In fact, he was one of the original hosts of Beyond 1894. And I will say too, like, speaking of university communications and everybody being able to suggest guests, I also leave the door open if they would like to guest host a podcast. Sometimes I'll make somebody guest host a podcast. Our 100th episode was Dr. Henderson interviewing Mayor Ronnie Walker. Okay. I just felt like that it needed to be special in that way. And so one day we had a guest fall through, and then the next guest fell through, and an episode had to come out like the next day, and I twisted Teddy's arm, and I was like, look, you're going to be a guest on this podcast eventually, but I need you to do it today if you're up for it. And he, of course, I shouldn't be a guest. I don't have anything interesting to say. And he's incredibly humble, but we love Teddy, and you're right. It's fun having him over there.
You, like many others, still working for this fine university after attending school here. A tech guy, graduated in 2018. Right? I got that year right. Okay. Dotson High School.
Dotson High School, the big city.
South of Jonesboro Hodge. I had to use the Google machine just to make sure I knew where that was, or Jonesboro proper, as Teddy would say.
Right.
But you decided to come here. Was that always part of the calculus?
So Dotson, right, south of here, but also a little bit of ways from my actual hometown of Sykes, which is the village of Sykes, Louisiana, in Wynn Parish.
A village. I love these disclaimers. I grew up technically in the village of South Howland, which is a south suburb of Chicago, which can be whether we call something a town or a village or a city or what are some other ones out there? But village, I hadn't heard of many villages other
Yeah.
than the one I came from.
Yeah,
That's
village
special.
and villages is pretty spot on for a place like Sykes, born and raised around, I don't know, like 110 people or something, if that.
Okay.
So very small.
Yeah.
Um,
Different from my village. My village, I
I
think, was
bet.
probably 20,000 as a suburb.
Okay,
But
just a little,
yeah.
A and B. But yeah, Dotson was about a 15, 20-minute drive even from where I lived out in the middle of nowhere down a dirt road. So, um, but yeah, Dotson High School, very small. I graduated with a class of 26, I think. So at the time, you get into junior and senior year, I hadn't given as much thought to college as I probably should have at the time.
Mhm.
And then it came time you take your ACT test and you have to submit the scores you pick 3 schools. And the only 2 that I picked that I had really any real chance of committing to were Tech and LSU. And toured both, liked both. Tech was obviously a little closer to home. Sykes is about an hour or so south of here. So Tech was in a good place, as far as distance from home. And just like every guest I've had on the podcast that talks about their experience here, when you set foot on campus, you kind of know. And I knew I wanted to be a business major of some type. I hadn't picked which business discipline yet, but I got a tour of the business building, felt very personal, made some connections early on before I'd even, applied here. And process of elimination, no, I didn't want to do any numbersy business majors. They ruled out econ, finance, accounting. Eventually I was in marketing with a concentration in sports marketing. And then the scholarship numbers came in, and it was a no-brainer at that point, especially to come to Louisiana Tech. It's always good to get paid to go to school instead of the other way around. So,
What kind of scholarship we talking? Does this have like some distinguished name to it? Did you I need to know?
at the time it was whatever. So I remember taking the ACT and then being like 1 point just short of whatever the max
Okay.
ACT scholarship was, and I took it again and got that little extra point out there.
Right.
So
it's an extremely brilliant man that I'm sitting next to. We've had some
you.
smart people on this podcast. Wyatt Olson over in athletics. This guy's pursuing his master's right now.
Yeah.
So it's incredible. Okay. So you come, but you fell in love with the place the moment you stepped foot on campus.
Yeah.
How much has it changed since you've been here?
The more things change, the more things stay the same type of deal, but in a good way. There are places and areas and buildings and walkways that are exactly the same. And then there are places that are completely different. And that's good. Like I tell people, in talking to alumni, the summer of my junior year, I think going into my junior year here, I was part of a student team of fundraisers, cold calling in the Marbury Alumni Center as like a part-time summer job. And one thing that I noticed calling for hours on end, just random phone numbers of alumni, is that they all had their own ideas about what Tech was like when they were there and what it's like now. And so many of them are just like, gosh, it's changed so much. But there were people who had graduated 2 years before who were saying that same thing. Yeah. So I think that speaks to the growth of the university and how positive that is, in the sense that like someone who graduated just a couple years ago, it's already changing and evolving. But I think that's important. And I like seeing, part of the benefit of being here since then has been that I've gotten to watch in real time how that change happens. Because for some people, it almost happens overnight, because you graduate, you leave, and then you come back 10 years later, and of course it looks different. But when you're here, like I've been, and you're able to kind of see it happen, that's been special too. And I do like that.
You graduated here. You've been working here since 2018. So you first arrived on campus 2014 or
Correct.
So? Okay, 2014. How would you measure the emotions, or at least the importance, the significance of what Louisiana Tech, means to you in the place that it holds in your heart? Because given that you're still here and you've continued to kind of, rise, and we'll get into the sports marketing side and how you've ended up where you are, but looking back on it, you've been here 12 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. You love this place.
I do. And this Louisiana Tech has been very good to me. I tell people all the time that I owe a lot to the university. And I do feel like I worked hard as a student, and I put a lot in to my education, but I've gotten that back tenfold, and I'm very thankful for that. Part of it is the university itself, and Russ and both have been very they've gotten very cozy for me. Um, Part of one thing that comes along with growing up in Sykes, going to school at Dots in these small towns. I mean, we used to have to go to Winfield uh, to go to a Walmart, and that was almost a 30-minute drive from our house. So it was like a weekly. You don't just go to Walmart and pick up
Hmm.
something because you're in the mood for it. You know, you got to go once a week. You got to know, like, don't forget anything because we're not coming back when we get home. So moving to Ruston was like, and I know better, but it was like the big city, right?
Right.
Like suddenly Walmart's 5 minutes away. There's a movie theater, like that sort of thing. It wasn't like mind blowing to me, but it was very easy to get comfortable with that right away. And knowing that a bigger metro area, even somewhere like Baton Rouge, uh, that I wouldn't have been as comfortable in my college experience and then my post college career in a place like that, it just becomes more and more evident every year. So, yeah, knowing like it's one thing to be a student at Tech and graduate, like there's always going to be a part of the university that's been with you. But if I get a different job and go somewhere tomorrow, like it's no place is going to have as much of an impact on my career, my academic career, my life as Ruston and Louisiana Tech have. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that one.
Yeah, and I'm sure it being less of a strategic play to run to the store
Yeah.
or see a movie and stuff, that certainly helps out. But yeah, you coming from as small a community as you were in and being here, like it's nothing. It's big city type stuff, but it has grown on you. Certainly pulls on all the heartstrings.
Mm-hmm.
That's obvious. I appreciate you for sharing it the way that you did. Now, associate director, and we'll start now and then work backwards.
Sure.
Associate director for communications is
Mm-hmm.
your title. The podcast, which we've talked about, I suspect more than anything is kind of like a passion project, but a necessary part of
Sure.
the gig also at the same time that you have carved out. Explain to folks what it is, though, exactly all that you're responsible for on a day to day.
So whenever I moved from athletics to the university side, as we call it, in summer of 2019, my job was social media strategist. And so the title change to associate director is pretty recent. I think a couple years or so ago. But it was just the title change to more appropriately
Be more
encapsulate what,
all
yeah, how
encompassing.
my job had
Yeah.
grown. But social media does take up a large part of what I still do, managing the main level university social media accounts takes up a lot of my day to day. I do a good bit of writing. Our office puts out the alumni magazine now twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
So helping out with writing and editing, proofing, any releases that gets written by me or any one of our writers or communicators gets sent to local press, and I'm responsible for doing that. I've dabbled in photography and photo editing and graphic design, and our office is, like a lot of places on campus, it's a small team that's asked to lift a large load. So the good part is we all kind of get to dabble in everybody's
Mm-hmm.
areas a little bit, and so that's been a good bit of what I've done, and I have enjoyed how my job's grown and become a little bit more well-rounded. Um, but like I said, social media still is at the heart of what I do, and the podcast now too, obviously. So
Sure. I, the uniqueness of y'all's office over at Wiley, to speak to your point about like kind of how small the group is, I feel like that helps, much like this community, the tightness, the intimacy brings the best out in folks. I've told you that a number of times on the 1894 podcast, but I feel like for what your charge is amongst those that you most closely work with, the idea that y'all are so intimately connected up there, it's kind of like a little bunker,
mm,
this little fraternity, sorority of sorts where you're constantly interacting and bumping into each other and able to like blend all of your ideas towards a common goal.
yeah,
Like I feel like that's a very positive thing when it comes to the work that you're doing from a communication standpoint. That makes sense?
yeah, it does, and we serve the entire university. So obviously, you can break down levels like I manage the main university accounts, but also there are college communicators that manage the social media accounts, and obviously there's people that break it down as you narrow the funnel. But um, at the top, we're able to and have to serve the entire university. So we work with admissions, we work with each college, we work with departments far and wide, um, and you know reminding ourselves as we go about a common mission and a common goal is easy because a place like Tech just kind of bakes it into you. But it does feel good when a small team's able to get something big done, move a big rock, as we say.
And you started as an assistant director of marketing on the
In
athletic side?
athletics, yes.
Okay. Kavanaugh tells me you were a part of the quote unquote street team.
That is correct.
I've never heard that term. So tell me what that means and what all you were involved with after graduating.
Sure. So the sports marketing concentration here differs from the regular marketing curriculum in one way that includes the internship class, which just essentially means getting an internship and getting class credit, is mandatory if you had a sports concentration when I was here. So I get to my senior year, and I've been good about keeping up with my curriculum and taking classes on time. And it's looking like I'm going to get to my last quarter and get to take a couple fun electives because I'm kind of ahead of schedule.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't gotten my internship yet, and I need to. So Kevin Richardson, who was recently on the Beyond 1894 podcast, he was the assistant director of marketing at the time. And I kind of cold emailed him and said I was interested in interning with Louisiana Tech Athletics, getting a marketing internship. And a quick interview later, and that's what I was doing. So the street team was the team of student interns for Louisiana Tech Athletics marketing, a wonderful team of, and times have changed, a wonderful team of unpaid interns doing it for the love of the game, for class credit, for whatever. But that was kind of my first exposure to a taste of what the assistant director position might even look like. And at the time, I did not have any inkling that would be the position I would be in a few months after that. But that is how it worked out. I spent the back half of my senior year doing that marketing internship, which entailed running social media stories in basketball games. I love doing that. Basketball's my favorite sport and has been for a long time. And then baseball season rolls around, and Kevin trusts me enough to run music during the baseball games at the home games that season. And then summer happens, and I graduate. And when I graduated, I still did not have a job lined up. It was kind of a come to Jesus moment between me and what my career might look like. And it just so happened to work out that Kevin ended up moving to Rice, and then that position opened up, and within the span of a couple months I'd interviewed and I was the assistant director. And then the challenge, or I guess the interesting part of that then, was when that school year started, the guys that I was just standing shoulder to shoulder with on street team, well, I was now their supervisor. So our first meeting of the year was a lot of me being like, guys, nothing's really changed.
Right.
Like, I'm not your boss. I'm not going to start bossing you around. I know what you're all capable of, and I know that we're going to be all right. So, that was the start of the sort of transition from street team to assistant director and staying in the marketing. Because we talked earlier about how long I've been here and how good tech has been to me. And if I would have graduated and not ended up in athletics here, there's a very strong chance that I wouldn't have been here all this time and been here now. So
yeah, athletics became kind of the gateway for you carving out a separate role, which is what you're doing now. And I feel like that's a big testament in life for you. And I've gone through similar things, and I'm sure a lot of folks, maybe not a lot. It's you would think it's rare, which is why you put in that disclaimer. Look, all of a sudden I was colleagues, I was shoulder and shoulder with these people, but now I got elevated and now I have to manage them. But finding the right way to get across that message, right? And kind of empathizing and trying to cut through any sort of awkwardness, like that's a big boy moment for anybody in their professional lives. And for you to have to, embrace that the right way that early in your life, like that only makes you better, that much earlier in your professional career. So that's really cool. I want to put a pin in the athletics part because I'm not done on that. I'm going to remind folks about Patton's Western Wear and Patton's Downtown. We've got Diamond Sports full throttle right now, softball, baseball. You can add to Patton's Downtown, hundreds of uniquely designed and officially licensed Bulldogs and Lady Texers apparel. The Lady Texers are competing in the WBIT at Rice on Thursday. You can find it all when you shop locally at Patton's, a North Louisiana tradition since 2007. Of course, Patton's Western Wear, styles, brands for your everyday life, game days, the job, any occasion, including the outdoorsman in you. So, Gavin, in addition to working on the marketing side, you also dabbled in doing some other stuff like PA announcing, right?
Yeah, so, and that was one they kept. So after I transitioned from athletics to university communications, and still to this day, I get the occasional phone call, the occasional text to come back and help with athletics, and I'm happy to. I made connections here that I'm very thankful for, and especially at the time because my supervisor when I was in athletics was still the assistant AD for marketing after I'd left, so I was happy to help him out whenever he needed it, and that included filling in on PA during and after I'd been here. So um, I did that in high school. I think my senior year, our school got a PA system in the gym that we had, so they needed somebody to give it a shot,
Mm-hmm.
and I was happy to do that. And so I didn't come in with no experience doing that, but I was happy to fill in. I think I've done baseball. I've done plenty of volleyball games. That was the one, they needed me for a full season after I'd already left and moved over to the university side, but I was happy to come back and do PA for volleyball. I've done a basketball game or two. I think the first basketball game I remember doing, Mr. Jimmy Washington, the voice of Tech basketball in terms of PA, he'd missed something like 2 games in 20 years or something, and one of them happened to be a game that I was needed to fill in for. Um, and then I think I've done one football game, so it's been fun getting to move around
Mm-hmm.
and try out each one. But I'm always happy to do some PA because it's kind of like a podcast, like Beyond 1894, in the sense that like it's just your voice, right?
Yeah.
Nobody can see what you do, and um, always been comfortable on a microphone. So
Yeah. Well, you've hosted the Tech Spees too, which I'm going to need you to tell me exactly what the Tech Spees are since I haven't experienced one yet. I'm in my
mhm.
first year. I can guess that it's an annual awards banquet. I got
Yes,
that much. I think most people can. How many years have you done that? It's been a few
yeah.
times, right?
I think I've emceed, hosted, whatever you want to call it, for at least 4, maybe 5 years now.
Okay.
So
What do you love about that experience?
I love that you know the athletic season, and I know this firsthand, is so fast paced. Even if you're a student athlete that just plays in one sport, your school year is so fast paced that there's not always a lot of time to settle down and celebrate. And
You're talking to a guy who was just part of the men's
yeah,
basketball run this past weekend in Huntsville, and for the Lady Texters, yeah, that
yeah,
that quickly it's over.
hmm
Um, and so to take inventory of everything, the
yes,
Tech Spees sound like one of the best ways to do it.
yes, and celebrate wins. Not just on the field and court and the playing surfaces, but in the classroom and in the community. I know all of our coaches stress the importance of student athletes being more than a student or an athlete. You're both, and that entails working hard at everything you do. And so, it's important to celebrate our student athletes and the staff here in athletics that help make a lot of the things here possible. And also, everybody loves dressing up for the night, so
Yeah,
that's fun too.
you bring a special flair to your wardrobe, is what I understand. Now, I haven't seen this, in the flesh, but I appreciate that.
Mm.
What goes into you like figuring out what you're going to wear? Where you
Okay,
shop?
so yeah, well, I'm not shy about my secret being that I do usually order
Amazon.
these items, yes, from Amazon. A lot of them are from Amazon, and I will leave the tag on, and I will wear them for the
Yes.
night. I will send them back because where else am I going to wear a sparkly blue suit jacket? Like they have limited uses, but I think that's good. If everyone's seeing me in that all the time, it loses its flair. But it's very early on, it became just piecing together, taking our school colors. You got your royal blue, your loyal blue, your red, this sort of Columbia blue,
Hmm.
um, and just finding different ways to mix and match that into the different suit and jacket looks, and finding ones that have little flares to them, little
Yeah.
sparkly bits or whatever, and just trying to piece that together and look half decent.
I love that. I've got to step up my game. I love that you're willing to own it too on Amazon because look, I get a lot of my wardrobe from
Mm,
Amazon. Like it is very underrated. Some of the non-name brand stuff that you can find that is almost as close to the real thing, and instead of spending as much as you normally would at another entity or department store or whatever it may be, you can get anything you want off
yeah, pretty
Amazon.
much.
You can, and it looks good, and people see it on you. They're like, "Where'd you get that from?" And I'm like, "Amazon,
Mm.
baby." Now, the whole returning it after the fact, I haven't been in a position where I've had to buy one item that I
Right.
might only want to wear one time. However, that is a cheat code of epic proportion and mad respect. So I will take a page out of that book of yours whenever I should get to that point. Your favorite Let me phrase it this way as we wind down things with Gavin Kelly on Tech Drive. What's your since you've arrived? Let's talk from an athletic standpoint, because you obviously are a sports fan and you were more heavily involved on the sports side very early in your professional career, and because this is primarily number one a sports podcast. Do you have a favorite Tech athletics moment from your time here? Any couple of things that might stand out?
I anticipated this question, so I was letting it keep me up a little last night, and I was thinking about it. And it's not really a moment, but I guess a full series of moments. So, like I said earlier, I love basketball. It's my favorite sport, and um, I was spoiled in my first few years as a student with the basketball teams that Tech was putting on the court. Any basketball game, any men's basketball game from 2014 to 2016, maybe even 2017, and me and my friends went to most, if not all of them, here at home. I mean, I never walked into the TAC and felt any sense that we were even going to come close to losing a game during that time. And the Michael Kaiser, Speedy Smith, like some of those guys that still to this day, are playing ball overseas and still playing basketball. When those guys were all here at Louisiana Tech, Alex Hamilton, Eric McCree, like as a student, you want to be able to go to games at your university and be able to feel confident in the team and win together and feel a part of something. And those basketball teams really felt that way for me. And it's really special to be able to like single out guys, not even just on basketball, but football, women's basketball, baseball. It's fun to, even when you're a student and they're your contemporaries, they're the same age as you, they might even have the same class as you. It's fun to be able to chart, you know, successful student athletes that come to the university that you're a part of. And there were several on those basketball teams. And I, again, very spoiled at the time getting to watch those teams. I think maybe in my time as a student, I saw the men's basketball team lose in the TAC maybe twice.
Yeah.
So it was big time. I enjoyed that a lot.
It's a massive home court advantage. I think I've had it in my notes. I should have this, down by memory for now, but I want to say it's like 79, 80% of the games that they've won at the TAC since its opening. So yeah, super powerful home court advantage, 14-3 this past year. So it's an incredible home court advantage. There's no question. For Gavin Kelly, long term, do you have any 5-year, 10-year plans? Where do you see yourself?
Yeah, that question always freaks me out. I tell people all the time that
Me too.
I don't know what I'm doing next week. So I start to get a little existential when I think about, because I find it works best when you kind of go with the flow.
Yeah.
And I've going back to Beyond 1894, bring it full circle. I've talked to guests who more often than not tell me, they planned a certain thing and it happened this way, but they're glad it happened this way because, things just work out how they're supposed to. And try to be very trusting. People talk about an external or an internal locus of control. What do you have control over? What are you responsible over? And if you sit down and actually write out the things you have control over as a person, it's for a lot of people, it's a shorter list than you realize. And so I try to remember that and try to just kind of like only put my hands on the wheel when I need to and let life kind of guide me where it needs me to go. And so far it's worked out, but 5 and 10-year plan is just hanging in there is my 5 to 10-year plan.
No, that's beautiful. I can relate. Be where your feet are. Stay in the moment. Otherwise you're not gonna seize the moment in front of you that day. One day at a time, attack it. And that's certainly been my motto. Yeah, there's been long-term type goals, but I am living the long-term goal that I've had for myself for such a long time. So now it's like I can't even begin to look, much past certainly this upcoming week and a couple of podcasts and a baseball game and a visit to Las Cruces, straight to Baton Rouge. And, basketball might be over, but now it's all gas, no breaks for me all the time. And now it's baseball season. So, and then we're going to look up before we know it, and it's going to be the summer. And I'm going off the grid for a month, all right? I'm letting everybody know I'm going into the darkness for an entire month, okay? I'm unplugging. This is kind of similar. My final question, what's your get up and go? What keeps you going each and every day?
Part of we talked earlier about, Tech being good to me and having an effect on me and being a part of who I am because it's given me so much and because I've been here for so long. I have personal stake in what I do for work. So making sure that the guests on the podcast and the episodes we put out are a good representation of the tech family, making sure the posts that I make on social media are indicative of what life is like at Louisiana Tech and what it is, what it means to be a Bulldog. Um, Writing, putting out the magazine, the photos that we release, the graphics we put out, everything. I want it to be as good as it can be, and I want it to matter because it does matter to me. Like I've thought before about like what if I was 2-3 years ago, what if I got a job doing the same thing at another university? Would I be able to do the job? Would I enjoy it? Probably yes, but also would I care about it as much? Would I be as invested in it off the rip? Definitely not, because I came into this job, I went into the athletics job already having personal stake in what I was doing because tech is important to me. So it's easy. I just got to get up and go.
That's awesome, man. Really special visit. I appreciate your time so much. Gavin Kelly, Associate Director of Communications at Louisiana Tech University. We haven't missed anything, have we? We could talk hobbies, food, television, movies. I mean, what do you love away from the job? Let's end it there.
Okay, sure. Yeah, TV, movies, video games, that sort of thing is always fun.
Okay.
But music is a big one.
All right.
Like our resident producer here behind the camera, I enjoy drumming.
Oh, that's right.
Quite a bit.
We need another 30 minutes on this podcast.
Play guitar. I've been in. Obviously, I would love to have more time to be in bands. I was in like gigging bar bands in high school and college, and it's a lot of fun. And I really wish I was able to connect with more musicians in the area and play for fun. But I get a lot of time to jam on my own, and that's fun too. So music's a big one. When people ask me like what I do for fun, it's usually my go-to answer because it does take up a lot of my free time. I love it.
Okay. Well, I love music. I love the live music scene around here. You know, whether if it's not in Ruston, you'll find me out in Monroe, you know, at certain places throughout. I mean, I am a sucker for anything live music. So we will talk more offline. Maybe you've got.
Let me ask you right now.
Yeah.
So best concert you've been to, and then dream concert that you would love to go to that you've never seen?
This is funny because I heard Patrick on Z107.5 on the way over here say he's got Zach Bryan tickets for March 28th in Baton Rouge. And I texted him immediately, and I'm like, bro, hook a brother up. However, I've got baseball here this weekend. I know full and well I cannot go down to Tiger Stadium for that. But I caught Zach Bryan in Greensboro, August of 2024. I love him more than anything right now. He is my bro. He is my beyond favorite. That that demonstrates the type of music, genre, everything that I love and most enjoy musically right now in my life. So I'm a big country guy, although Zach Bryan would take offense to that because he thinks he's a little different than country, but that's another conversation. So I've taken in Zach Bryan in Greensboro. Phenomenal. Loved it. I don't know. Like, I don't discriminate in terms of music. I take it all in. I've got a very sensible rap hip hop background from growing up in school, in grade school.
Chicago.
Yeah, and Eminem was always one of my favorites growing up in grade school. Before I should probably have been listening to him, but I've got appreciation, for it all. Country's my main driver. Love '90s alternative, some sort of maybe reunion type thing of like the best, maybe grunge alternative '90s stuff would probably be a pretty cool concert experience. I used to work as an usher at a big venue in the south side of Chicago, Tinley Park, and I remember working like a Warped Tour, and that was like Fall Out Boy's first year on the scene, and then also the Offspring. We thought they were coming to an end, even though they're still doing shows. So I love it all, man. Just give me country music's greatest. Maybe I'll put Lainey Wilson, Langley, Zach Bryan, whoever. I'll take it all, man.
You gotta catch Brooks and Dunn. You got the tech connection there. You gotta catch them. They'll be around soon, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
In Shreveport. So.
That'll be good. Kick Brooks had him in the booth for the homecoming game, third quarter. That was awesome. All right, Gavin, we've taken enough of your time. I love you so much for coming by and returning the favor. The home and home.
Yeah,
okay?
I love the part 2 of a 2-part collab. I love it.
Yeah, Beyond 1894. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. He's Gavin Kelly. Appreciate Carson so much. Jack, GB, Kyle Kavanaugh. I'm the voice of the Bulldogs, Kyle Schasberger. We'll catch you next week on Tech Drive.